Posted a picture of yourself roaming, looking for a vaccine appointment. How is it going?
Yeah, not well. It's this process of refresh zip code fail, refresh zip code fail. That's my entire world right now. I have no idea what's going on with politics. I'm sorry, I can't talk about anything today because I'm so distracted by trying to get a vaccine. And I should say, in all seriousness,
I remember those days. I remember waiting in line for my roommate for Bruce Springsteen tickets when I had wicked menstrual cramps for hours. I remember those days. Concert tickets. I'm trying to.
Remember in the day there was a kind of a telephone that was a handheld telephone, and it had the redial, but it would still do the sort of the dial sound instead of the digital beeping sound. Yeah. So you'd redial, but it would still take as long as if you were actually dialing.
Right.
And we had one of those phones in our house growing up. And so I'd call for like Motley Crue tickets or something ridiculous and be doing that redial process, trying to get through to Ticketmaster to buy seats. And it occasionally worked, but it shouldn't be like that for vaccines.
Well, you're
be that way for Motley Crue.
Your incredibly smart, genetically superior girlfriend got an appointment, I see. She's going to be on Team Moderna.
Yes.
Kimberly got an
she's much faster than I am on the redial front.
Well, she's a girl.
She has a whole system.
Boys are
Moderna.
Boys are dumb.
Oh God.
There you go.
What?
Boys are dumb. Throw rocks at them. Yes.
So many traders, so many wardrobe choices for a girl to make in the morning. Do I go with my dance like Russia isn't watching t-shirt or my POTUS I'm still with her shirt? Which one do I choose? I'm going to have to do wardrobe changes, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, look, Donald Trump's a giant traitor.
Collusion.
Remember when Trump Russia was a hoax? The hoax. No collusion, hoax. No collusion, hoax.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Kind of lots of collusion. Okay. I tweeted Malcolm Nance immediately and said, "Oh my God, I'm shocked. Who could have seen this what? Wow. Manafort passed sensitive polling data to Konstantin Kalimit, who was a Russian intelligence agent, who you had the feeling like, did we know this already? But I guess the big deal was this is the first time the United States government has. So that is the back channel to the Trump campaign right there. Right. And we were saying, like, people are focused on what was it they passed. First of all, as somebody pointed out, the story is the fact that there was a channel that we've obviously established for the first time. Yeah. Absolutely, there was a channel. There was collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. And they said, do you think that was the only time that they used that back channel of passing stuff? It's like, yes, they internal polling data and information to help Donald Trump win in those by the tiny amount he won in each of those swing states. Yeah. That's exactly. And I know I felt like, how is this new? And that's, I guess, how it's new, because the United States government has never said, but I'm with Uncle Rob Reiner. I knew he would be there with me. He said, no surprise, Trump colluded with Russia. We've always known his presidency was illegitimate. Now it's been proven. For the sake of our democracy, the man must be indicted and jailed. How quickly, and was it sooner than you thought? You get me Glenn Kirshner text yesterday, Travis?
He was already in the wheelhouse, but I was also trying to get us a congressperson to talk about expanding the Supreme Court.
Yes.
That didn't work
for
out,
all of it.
You got Glenn.
I'm for all of it. We'll talk to him about that as well. But
yeah.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like, it's only me that, like, this. First of all crime happens in the past. I do not understand the people like, oh, let's just move on now. It's like, Do you understand?
Your pack of Boy Scouts. Your pack of Boy Scouts analogy.
Right. It's like, oh, that's to move on. They're in the rearview mirror. Yes, I ran them over and I was drunk, but look, they're way back there now. I mean, they're move on. I mean, okay. Is it me or is it 3 times Donald Trump has been proven to be an out-and-out traitor to the United States of America? How do we just let that go? Like, we knew this, that he was illegitimately installed in the first place and he colluded. Yeah. Okay. Then he colluded with Ukraine. That's part of the intelligence that came out about this, that they used Russian disinformation against Biden, right? Ukraine. That whole thing that he got, wasn't that? Oh my God, that was the first impeachment. Doesn't it seem like yesterday?
Oh my God, you always remember your first.
Second impeachment was the third time he was a traitor when he tried to overthrow the government of the United States. We can't. Help me. I need Glenn. Glenn, I need you right now. I need you right now. I need you for the whole show.
Glenn Kirshner.
I don't understand. What? I can't even put words together. Why are people not making a bigger deal? It's just, I understand we've had another mass shooting, 8 people dead at the FedEx Center in Indianapolis. I know the news cycles seem just the same, right? It's just this horrible racism, another horrible videotape of a horrible police shooting, this time of a 13-year-old in Chicago. It's just, but this, I don't see how there's an any bigger deal than we have proven. It's not like, a former president 20 years ago. He just was that guy a few, 3, 4
Still threatening to run again.
Ago.
Biden hasn't even gone through his first 100 days. That's how soon ago Trump was.
Right.
But he's done so much.
Right. Frank Slaguzzi is the one that set you off. He just said there was collusion with Russia. That's what you said. Yes. And
that's all I needed from Frank. And wait, you're saying there was collusion between Trump and the Russians? Really? That's not really much of a headline. And it sparked the immediate thought that, okay, we've got 10 documented felony obstruction of justice counts because Trump tried to cover up his coordination with Russia. Sitting there ready for the prosecuting.
Well, you said Mueller meticulously documented Trump's several felony obstruction of justice crimes, preserving the evidence for when Trump left office. Mueller pointedly testified that Trump can be prosecuted for his crimes upon leaving office. So how about some justice? Mitch McConnell said the same thing in our counting now, 3rd treasonous, episode with Donald Trump. The second being Ukraine, which is part of this. I mean, it is almost mind-boggling, Glenn, isn't it, to get your mind around all of this? So, yes, Mueller basically said he should be prosecuted for the obstruction of justice. Yeah. Mitch McConnell said he should be prosecuted for the insurrection. And Glenn, please tell me justice is coming. I don't understand how we could just say, all crime is in the past, right?
Yeah. Here's the thing, Steph. We are all so frustrated because we see Trump, preening around like a deranged peacock in his third-rate Florida resort, continuing to push the big lie, continuing to gin up potential violence just as a vehicle to raise more money. We get that. But what we have to remember is that for 4 years, we had a Department of Justice headed up by, lackeys and sometimes worse than lackeys. And there was no real investigating going on into Donald Trump, his corrupt cabinet, his criminal family members. So we have to give Bill Barr a minute. He's been there for a handful of weeks.
Merrick Garland. You mean Merrick Garland?
Time. Merrick Garland. I'm sorry, Merrick Garland. He's only been there a short time, And he really, first he needs to reassemble, a law-abiding cadre of prosecutors at the Department of Justice. Then he has to investigate and dig in. Then he has to indict. So I absolutely believe it's coming. The hard part is not giving in to the frustration. And you can see from my tweets, from time to time, I give in to the frustration because, Donald Trump needs to get got.
Well, yeah. And I mean, Glenn, thank you for that, because you tweeted that. You said, well, we're trying to be patient, waiting for accountability and justice. While we wait, Trump rumbles around his third-rate Florida resort, telling lies calculated to inspire more violence. Let's hope the delay is simply because DOJ is dotting the insurrection I's and crossing the treason T's. I mean, Glenn, I will say, as many people were saying yesterday, there is a reason they let this out, this information leak. And what is your take on when we knew this? The Trump administration, this happened 5 years ago. I'm sure they knew this, right? I mean,
nobody knows when we knew it. I saw Adam Schiff last night on Lawrence, and he was asked that question, and Lawrence pressed him. And even he said, and I credit him all day long, that he's just learning about it now.
Yeah.
Why didn't we know it previously? Because Trump and company buried it. They perpetrated it in the first instance, and then they buried it. So, that's why all of this has to come to a head, and Donald Trump has to get popped with a great big indictment.
Yeah, and do you feel like Barr is going to have legal responsibility? Because obviously, as we said at the time, his memo, even more now, is how is that not a crime in itself? Him saying exactly the opposite of what we knew to be true, that there was no collusion and no this and no that.
Yeah, Barr has to be criminally investigated. He wouldn't be the first attorney general ever to be prosecuted and sent to prison.
Oh, no.
And I don't think give any of these people a pass. It's too much to hope for that all criminal politicians, whether appointed or elected, are going to ultimately be held accountable in a court of law. There's going to have to be some triage, right? We can't prosecute everybody. But I think Garland is up to the prosecutorial task of deciding who catches a charge and who doesn't. We just have to be patient.
Well, I agree, Glenn. And I just feel like these crimes really, in my mind, are treason. I don't understand how we let any of it go. Just go, well, we'll just let Ukraine go. But okay, maybe we should prosecute the insurrection. But let's let Russia go. That was too long ago. I mean, you can't, for history, for president, you can't let any of this go. This is an illegitimately installed president that absolutely colluded with a foreign power to get elected, then tried to, this is the second big thing. I was saying, Glenn, we almost forget that the second impeachment, the Ukraine thing, was part of this Russian disinformation that they used again to commit treason and cheat again in 2020. And then when he lost, then we have the insurrection and that level of treason. I just don't. Are these all separate? Charges, trials? Glenn, explain to us what should happen.
Oh, yeah, they are definitely separate conspiracies, and these would be charges that are brought separately. There's some obvious overlap,
mm-hmm.
But you can go back to the base. Yeah, you can go back to the basics of Donald Trump bribing and extorting President Zelensky to do him a political favor, though. And Bill Barr was deep in the mix for that, because in that same phone call, Donald Trump said, and by the way, in furtherance of this criminal scheme, get with my guys, Giuliani and Bill Barr. From that moment forward, Bill Barr should have, at a minimum, been conflicted out of all legal decisions pertaining Donald Trump, because he was just as a co-conspirator. So we're going to see, some people say it's too much to get our arms around all of this criminality, from Trump Russia to the insurrection. And the reality is, it's too much not to get our arms around this criminality.
Thank you for your sexy shout out from bed that drove the ladies crazy, Malcolm Nance.
The problem was Travis was ragging me on getting that done, and I was in bed. And I said, I think this is the perfect place to do his shout out. Put on my best Marvin Gaye voice.
Yes, it was too much for me, a woman alone in lockdown for a year. How dare you, sir? All right, so
I went to channel 632, cool jazz.
So yeah, I expected you to have a Courvoisier and a robe. Okay, but
okay.
Speaking of exciting, how exciting was it for you to have? First of all, we got a readout of the president's call with Putin from the United States. First of all, let's start with that it did not come from Russia. And that the American president pressed Putin on issues like election interference, cyber attacks, and Russian troop buildup around Ukraine. I mean, it's just having an American president again, right?
This is just wonderful, having not only an American president, but an American president that actually reads his material, understands what's going on, comes up using his staff for solutions, and then still can have the empathy to attend the funeral of a Capitol Hill policeman and show such charm and grace. Not to mention being able to have, a first lady who is also empathetic as well. Mm-hmm. So It's just wonderful. We now understand that, government works. And for government to work, you have to believe in government as opposed to literally mobilize people to destroy it.
It must give you extra schadenfreude, though, just the degree to which Russia appears to be losing its... and Putin as well, over having an actual American president is going to hold them to account again, right?
Look, everything that's happening with Russia right now is pretty schadenfreude delicious because first off, they moved tens of thousands of soldiers to the Ukrainian-Russian border. And most analysts believe that was an attempt to elicit a response from Biden to see what he would do, even if it turns out just to be an exercise and not actually a precursor to invading more Ukrainian territory. Biden is not having it. First thing you saw the Secretary of Defense announced yesterday, despite the fact that Donald Trump committed to withdrawing all U.S. forces from Germany out of hatred of Angela Merkel, we're putting in another 500 soldiers into Germany now.
Right.
We are taking our commitments to NATO seriously. And, I don't think Putin is going to get away with it, especially since we are announcing new sanction regimes over his treatment of Navalny that are really going to go after their wallets. And that's what the Russians are most concerned with. Yeah. So it's awesome having, government that works for the people there and showing our adversaries they can't get away with what they've been doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and speaking of troops, I mean, also how fantastic about finally getting out of Afghanistan. So he is by September 11th is the date he has picked. Obviously Trump, I guess, had picked May 1st or something, but Biden reached this. Here's something that's new too. Biden reached his decision after months of review, ultimately concluding Washington needed to set a clear timeline for withdrawal to avoid fresh fighting with the Taliban. I mean, whether it's that or Russia, we're also working with the rest of the world again, right? On whatever our plans are.
Yes, and the first thing Biden did was committed himself back to NATO. That organization we created in the 1940s that the United States thought up and put together. We are now back in that wholeheartedly and showing our allies we have commitments. With Afghanistan, that's a tougher nut.
Yeah.
Trump seemed hell-bent to surrender the country to the Taliban, to the point where he was going to invite them to Camp David so that he could have a photo op with them while turning the country over to them way ahead of where the Department of Defense said that we would have the resources to stop the collapse of that government. U.S. forces are coming out in their entirety. However, we still have commitments to Afghanistan to train their army, to train their air force, and to keep special operations in that area so that ISIS of Khorasan province, which is what they call ISIS in Afghanistan, don't knock down the government. But the Taliban, I'm sorry to say it, unless there is a real negotiated settlement and the Taliban play by favorites, we're probably going back to, the day before September 11th, in terms of how the Taliban ran that government. They will possibly, if we can build the army up to where they can hold it off, we don't want a Taliban government where they go back to executing everyone that worked with us. They collapse all the structures we put into place. Women become third world citizens again and back under the chador, never to see light again. And that children are kicked out of school and only are allowed to read the Quran. And that's all. That's what the Taliban did. But we have been there 20 years.
Yeah, I think our friend Jim Ward had the best strategy. He said we airlift everything with a vagina out of Afghanistan, even the goats.
Yes.
And I'm afraid to say it. In a couple of years, we will probably have our last helicopter out of Saigon moment from Afghanistan because it was done poorly. The Bush administration ignored it for years so that they could invade Iraq.
Yeah.
And look, it took Iraq almost 18 years to become successful in standing up their own forces. But they almost had to lose their country to ISIS to do it. I'm not sure if culturally Afghanistan is capable of maintaining that level of sophistication in dealing with the Taliban. Afghanistan is a very rural country. It appeals to very hardcore, culturally conservative mindset of the Taliban.
Yeah.
And the Taliban will come in and wave the Quran and boom, everything we worked for will go away.
Yeah.
But it will be their choice.
Did you see Senator Chris Murphy said that every time he went to Afghanistan, the general said, the general before me did it wrong, and now we're doing it right. It's just, it really did become just an endless war, right? It's just, I guess we're finding out the same thing the Soviets did in that sense, right?
Well, the Soviet Union was collapsing. So they were, that the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan did not really result in what we think. They were a poor country trying to do a poor thing militarily, just literally slaughter everybody. Our issue is that we went into it with cultural expectations that we didn't understand, and that thinking everything was about breaking the will of the Taliban. Well, we didn't do that to the North Vietnamese very well. We didn't do it to North Korea. These things have to be negotiated settlements. But the worst component of this is we just never got Pakistan to really play fairly on our side.
Yeah.
The Taliban have been pushed by them. They practically, fostered the Taliban inside of Pakistan, and they use it as a buffer against Indian influence between Afghanistan and Iran. And, and they're corrupt as heck.
Yeah.
So long as we never solve that problem, we're never going to solve the problem of Afghanistan. It'll become a vassal state of Pakistan, but it will become the Islamic State of Afghanistan again. And that's just hard to grasp at this point after 20 years.
Yeah. I loved your tweet. Glenn Greenwald goes full Milo to defend Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
I mean, our friend Glenn Greenwald. Our friend Glenn Greenwald. Really? If you have to Google the age of consent, no, it's right.
Never go full Milo. I just almost speechless because he's in full Ryan Knight territory these days. This is a good example of where the extreme left comes around to the extreme right. And Greenwald attacked Hunter Biden ruthlessly and said, we have enough evidence, even though there was no evidence, to judge him harshly, and was tearing down Joe Biden.
He's a MAGA
doing
troll.
all of this on Russia Today and Fox News.
Yeah.
He's
a MAGA troll at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. He is a MAGA troll. And the thing is that it's now finally hit the mainstream. It was just me for a while, but just don't forget, I was a CIA plant at MSNBC in order to put CIA words into the mainstream.
Right.
That's crazy, and Glenn Greenwald lives in this fantasy world in Brazil where he thinks that he is the arbiter of liberalism for the conservatives. And he is just nothing more than their sock puppet.
Yeah. I'm glad you are calling us from an aviary. Say hello to the birds.
Yeah, the birds sound lovely.
Wow.
It's
Or like
all
a
the
Disney
cars
film.
driving down the street here on our first really crazy sunny day. It's going to hit 70 degrees on the East Coast here. So
Wow.
Nice.
So Malcolm,
almost like how
what's your take on? Boy, I gotta say, it's just racism is the theme of the day, isn't it? Whether we're talking still about trying to hold these Capitol rioters to account, all these white supremacists, or what we're seeing in the Derek Chauvin trial, and now the Dante what? I mean, it is. I was thinking of you with this serviceman that is being hassled for doing absolutely nothing wrong, for having a new car with a temporary registration, and we're in get out of the car and pepper spray and tasing and on and on. I mean, I just want to get your take on everything in the news right now as it regards that.
I'm an African American man. I've trained law enforcement. I've trained with law enforcement. I'm on a foundation, a law enforcement academic foundation as a counterterrorism guy. And I'm writing this new book about right-wing extremism in the United States. And it is just simply this, okay? This is all a pure matter of racism. And we have to accept it, that law enforcement in the United States, when they see Black people, their personal bias or whatever, their blue line bias that's stepping in now makes them think that all Black people are criminals. In every circumstance, something is wrong. And that's because their bias makes them believe that we don't reach or have the same level of equality with them. No matter how wealthy we are, no matter how educated we are, no matter what our status is in society. The first thing that they did in that policeman in Virginia against the Army officer was attempt to diminish his stature by saying, what are you, some sort of specialist? That's like a private or a corporal. The guy is a commissioned Army officer, far higher rank than I ever achieved. And by trying to do that, he wanted to diminuate his standing. Look, and then Kim coming out and saying, well, Black Lives Matter, you should understand where we're coming from. They equate a protest movement with terrorism in their head. And whoever is doing this training, whoever is out there, maybe they're all Trump supporters. It has to be broken. Law enforcement in the United States right now, in terms of equal opportunity, is broken. We have to remove the warrior cop mindset away from them to the defender, shield cop, who is out to protect every individual.
And that's the through line.
There's a famous video on the internet about the guy in the monster truck who is flipping the cop off and shouting at him and walking away from him, gets in his truck. Nothing happens to that guy.
Yeah, well, and that's the through line that goes through the Capitol rioters right to Minnesota, right? Is these white supremacists infiltrating the military and the police, and that the Trump administration did nothing about it. So at least the Biden administration is starting the work that we really needed to do a long time ago, right?
You have to remove the word infiltrate from that discussion point. They're not infiltrating law enforcement and the military and the police at all. They are part of it.
Yeah.
Infiltrate would be a clandestine operation to put people inside to specifically get skills and then extract yourself out so that you could share those skills. No, they're not doing that. They just love it. They're part of it. The same way that, in the between 1865 and 1940, everyone was in the Ku Klux Klan. If you wanted to be part of politics, you had to be a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And people would know it secretly at home, but they just were.
Yeah.
All the cops. And that's why we had soldiers beaten and killed after World War II, after winning, Purple Hearts and Silver Stars. It was inherent in the system. It has died in the wool. And now we need to wash it out.
Yeah.
They need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Malcolm, always fantastic. You look super hot in your sunglasses outside.